So I wanted to talk about the hard problem of consciousness as it relates to psychedelic substances, plants, and chemicals, um, and fungi. Because, if you look at this right off the bat, one of the things that might come to mind is that it basically shows how um, probable the materialist assertion is that consciousness is nothing but a chemical state of the brain, because by ingesting one of these substances, when you eat mushrooms, psilocybin uh, gets into your synapses and mimics serotonin, at least relatively so, maybe not exactly, um, and it alters the way that you experience the world. So obviously there is a strong connection between the types and nature of the chemicals in your brain and the type and nature of the experience that that brain is going to produce or share or have, or however you want to conceptualize the relationship. Uh, but then when you actually consider the nature of the psychedelic experience itself, um, retaining the materialist assumption becomes more difficult, because while once you've posited all the materialist axioms, such as that the world is objective, that it's representable by clear and innate ideas, or human language. You have to make these assumptions in order to be a materialist. And once you've taken psychedelics, it's not that those axioms don't lead to the same materialist conclusion. It's that all of a sudden you have good reasons not to make those assumptions, not to make assumptions like that you can separate your experience from the experience of other people, or that you could stand outside, the sun, for example, and understand it in an objective way, when really the sun is what governs the very rhythms of your biological life. When you're awake, when you go to sleep, how you feel, what you eat, it's responsible for growing our food. And to think that you understand it as this distant scientific object is, you do have a lot of knowledge about this thing called the sun, this object that can be empirically studied, but you don't know it, or at least you know it a lot more intimately in an unconscious way, in a way that you don't need to collect data about, because it actually has been an integral part of what gave rise to your organism to begin with. You're tied to the sun, facing backwards, and you may be looking forward and thinking that you're discovering all this new stuff, but really, it loops back around, and you're reaching for yourself all the time, trying to know things objectively. So psychedelic drugs keep you from making the materialist assumptions, because all of a sudden the world no longer appears as stable, objective, and grounded, or founded on something immutable, the unmoved mover, the ultimate law. There doesn't appear to be one when you're, or after you've had a psychedelic experience. And certainly, throughout human history, and even today, people have these same types of awakening or mystical experiences without psychedelics. So it's not that psychedelics are required. But the more we do studies on actual meditators who have meditated for 15 and 25 years, their brains are actually different. So this idea that consciousness and biology are connected is obviously true. It holds a lot of weight. The question is just what kind of relationship. It's easy for a materialist to say that psychedelics prove the reductionistic idea that consciousness is a product of the brain, and there's no conscious state independent of any brain. But then the person who may have been a materialist, say, but actually tried psilocybin or LSD, all of a sudden has a conscious experience that contradicts the materialist conclusion. And there's this huge conflict there. There's this dissonance, and either the scientist represses the experience or accepts new data that forces the paradigm to change, that forces the a priori assumptions or axioms that our philosophical system assumes before it even begins a quest after knowledge. The psychedelic experience just reorients the observer and forces the observer to take into consideration the role that they play in how the object appears. And the hard problem has a context so vast that it may require a reframing of the problem itself. In other words, we can't get beyond this hard problem of consciousness by finding a solution to the problem as it's been framed. We can only move beyond the question by ascertaining why it was impossible to answer from the beginning. So in other words, we have to unask the question.